The contractions were getting stronger. I gripped Henry's hand as another wave of pain hit me. The hospital room felt cold and bright. Too bright. I needed him there with me. After 9 months of carrying our baby, this was the moment we had talked about for so long. "Henry, please don't leave," I begged between breaths. "I need you here. The baby's coming soon." He pulled his hand away and checked his phone for the third time in 5 minutes. His face looked annoyed, like I was bothering him with something unimportant. "Look, I've been here for hours already," he said, not meeting my eyes. "I'm tired. You'll be fine. Women have babies every day." My heart sank. This wasn't how I imagined this day would go. "But Henry, this is our first baby. I'm scared. What if something goes wrong?" He was already reaching for his jacket. "Nothing's going to go wrong. The nurses know what they're doing better than I do anyway." I felt tears starting to form. "Please, just stay until the baby comes. I promise it won't be much longer." But he was already walking toward the door. He paused and looked back at me lying there, vulnerable and afraid. "I'll be back later," he said coldly. "Try to get some rest." The door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone. The nurse came in just as another contraction hit. I was still staring at the door, hoping Henry would change his mind and come back. Maybe he was just getting some air. Maybe he needed a moment to process everything. "Where's your husband, honey?" the nurse asked gently, checking my monitors. "He just stepped out," I lied, trying to protect him even though he had abandoned me. "He'll be back soon." She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. She had probably seen this before. The nurse stayed with me through the next few contractions, holding my hand where Henry should have been. An hour passed. Then 2. The pain was getting worse, and I was getting scared. This was happening fast now. I kept looking at the door, waiting for him to walk through it with an apology and maybe some flowers. "Can you try calling my husband?" I asked the nurse. "His name is Henry. Maybe he's in the cafeteria." She stepped out to make the call. When she came back, her face was gentle but sad. "Honey," she said softly, "security checked everywhere. His car isn't in the parking lot anymore. He's already gone home." Those words hit me harder than any contraction. He's already gone home. While I was here bringing our child into the world, he was at home, probably watching TV, probably sleeping. I started crying then, not from the pain of labor, but from the pain of betrayal. 8 hours later, I held my beautiful baby girl in my arms. She was perfect. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and the sweetest little face I had ever seen. Despite everything, this moment was pure magic. But Henry wasn't there to see it. He missed her first breath, her first cry, the moment the doctor placed her on my chest. He missed everything that mattered. The nurses were amazing. They celebrated with me, took pictures, and made sure I felt supported. But it wasn't the same. This should have been the happiest day of my life, and instead, I felt empty inside. I picked up my phone with shaky hands and typed a message to Henry. "Baby girl born. 6 pounds, 8 ounces. Everything went well." I waited for 20 minutes. No response. I typed another message. "She's beautiful, Henry. She has your eyes." Still nothing. I stared at the screen, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. Our daughter deserved better than this. I deserved better than this. Finally, I typed one more message. "Don't bother coming back." I sent it before I could change my mind. Then I turned off my phone and focused on my daughter. At least one of her parents would be there for her from the very beginning. Henry showed up the next morning with a cheap bouquet of flowers from the hospital gift shop. He looked like he had just rolled out of bed. His hair was messy, and he was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. "Hey, sorry I'm late," he said casually, like he had just missed a dinner date instead of the birth of his child. I fell asleep and didn't hear my alarm. I stared at him. "You fell asleep?" "Yeah, I was exhausted. You know how tired I've been with work lately." He handed me the flowers without even looking at our daughter sleeping in my arms. I didn't buy it. Not for a second. Who falls asleep when their wife is in labor? Who doesn't check their phone for 8 hours when they're expecting news about their baby? "Henry, I was in labor for 12 hours. I texted you multiple times. I needed you here." He shrugged. Like I said, I was sleeping. But I'm here now, right? Before I could respond, his phone buzzed loudly. He immediately grabbed it, and for just a second, I saw the screen. A woman's name flashed across it, Vanessa. My blood ran cold. Who was Vanessa? And why was she texting my husband at 9 in the morning? Henry quickly flipped the phone over, but it was too late. I had seen it. Who's Vanessa? I asked quietly. His face changed. He looked guilty, then defensive. Nobody important. Just someone from work. But the way he said it told me everything I needed to know. Just someone from work? I repeated, still holding our newborn daughter. Someone from work is texting you at 9 in the morning? Henry's jaw tightened. Look, I don't need you interrogating me right now. I just got here. Can't you just be happy that our baby is healthy? The way he snapped at me confirmed what I was starting to suspect. My husband was hiding something. Something big. You're right, I said calmly. The baby is healthy. No thanks to you. He looked annoyed. What's that supposed to mean? It means you left me alone during the most important moment of our lives. It means you missed your daughter being born because you were supposedly sleeping. It means some woman named Vanessa is more important than your wife and newborn child. Henry stood up quickly. You're being dramatic. I told you, she's just a coworker. We're working on a project together. What kind of project requires texting at 9 in the morning? It's complicated. You wouldn't understand. That stung. I had a college degree. I had worked in marketing for 5 years before taking time off for the pregnancy. But suddenly I was too stupid to understand his work. I made a mental note of the name. Vanessa. I wrote it down on the back of a hospital pamphlet when Henry wasn't looking. Something told me I was going to need to remember it. We brought the baby home 2 days later. I named her Emma, after my grandmother. Henry didn't argue about the name, which told me he wasn't paying much attention to anything involving his daughter. At home, he suddenly became the perfect husband. He brought me breakfast in bed, did the dishes without being asked, and even changed a few diapers. It felt fake, like he was overcompensating for something. But I noticed other things too. He started working late again just 3 days after we got home. He claimed the office needed him for some big project. When I asked which project, he got vague and defensive. You wouldn't understand the technical details, he said. Just trust me, okay? His phone was constantly buzzing. He would grab it quickly and walk into another room to text back. When I asked who was messaging him so much, he said it was his boss. But I had met his boss at the company Christmas party. His boss was a 60-year-old man who barely knew how to send emails. One evening, while Henry was in the shower, I decided to check our joint credit card account online. We had always shared our finances. I had every right to look. What I found made my stomach drop. There was a charge from 3 days ago. The Marriott downtown. $250. The same night I gave birth to our daughter, Henry had been at a hotel. And it wasn't cheap. I stared at the hotel charge on my laptop screen. My hands were shaking. The date was unmistakable. The exact night Emma was born. While I was in the hospital, pushing our daughter into the world, Henry was at the Marriott downtown. I picked up the phone and called the hotel. Hi, I need to verify a charge on my credit card, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Room reservation for Henry Walsh on the 15th. The woman on the phone was helpful. Yes, I see that reservation. Double occupancy. The room was booked for 1 night. Double occupancy. My heart sank. He wasn't alone. Thank you, I managed to say before hanging up. I sat there staring at Emma sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. She didn't deserve this. She didn't deserve a father who was cheating on her mother the night she was born. When Henry came downstairs from his shower, I decided to test him. How was work the night Emma was born? I asked casually, not looking up from feeding the baby. He froze for just a second. What do you mean? I mean, after you left the hospital. What did you do? I told you I went home and fell asleep. I was exhausted. Are you sure you didn't go anywhere else? His face flushed red. Why are you asking me this? Of course I went home. Where else would I go? He was lying. And he wasn't even good at it. The next morning, I couldn't hold it in anymore. The hotel charge, the mysterious texts, his obvious lies. It was all too much. Henry, are you having an affair? I asked directly while he was eating breakfast. He nearly choked on his coffee. What? Are you insane? Why would you ask me that? Because you're acting strange. Because you abandoned me at the hospital. Because someone named Vanessa keeps texting you. Because you spent the night at a hotel instead of coming home. His face went from shock to angry in seconds. You've been checking our credit cards? You've been spying on me. It's our joint account, Henry. I have every right to look at it. This is ridiculous, he said, standing up aggressively. You just had a baby. Your hormones are all messed up. You're being paranoid and jealous for no reason. So you're saying you didn't spend the night at the Marriott? I'm saying you're acting crazy. This is exactly the kind of behavior that pushes husbands away. Maybe if you trusted me more, we wouldn't have these problems. He was gaslighting me, making me question my own sanity, making me feel like I was the problem. But I wasn't crazy. I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had found. And instead of defending himself or explaining the charges, he was attacking me. I looked at him calmly and said nothing. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't beg for answers. I just started planning. Over the next few weeks, I began to pull away emotionally. Not dramatically. I didn't want Henry to notice what I was doing, but I stopped asking him about his day. I stopped trying to include him in conversations about Emma. I stopped caring where he went or when he came home. Instead, I started taking care of myself. I opened my own bank account at a different bank. I told them I needed it for baby expenses, which wasn't technically a lie. I started transferring small amounts of money from our joint account every few days. Never enough for Henry to notice, but enough to build up a safety net. I also started documenting everything. Every late night. Every suspicious phone call. Every time he chose work over his family. I wrote it all down in a notebook I kept hidden in Emma's diaper bag. Henry seemed relieved that I had stopped questioning him. He thought he had won. He thought his gaslighting had worked, and I was just going to accept his lies and suspicious behavior. He had no idea I was gathering evidence. 2 weeks later, Henry noticed some money missing from our checking account. Where's the $300 that was in our account? He asked, waving the bank statement in my face. Baby expenses, I said calmly. Diapers, formula, doctor visits. Babies are expensive. He looked suspicious. $300 for diapers? And clothes and a car seat and bottles and medicine. You'd know how much things cost if you ever came shopping with me. He couldn't argue with that because he had never once offered to help with baby shopping. A few days later, Henry exploded over something small. I had asked him to pick up more diapers on his way home from work, and he forgot. When I mentioned it, he completely lost it. I work all day to pay for this house and everything in it, he shouted. The least you could do is handle the shopping yourself. I just had a baby 6 weeks ago, Henry. I'm still recovering. And I'm taking care of Emma 24 hours a day while you're out doing God knows what. God knows what? I'm working. I'm supporting this family. But apparently, that's not enough for you. Now you want me to be your personal assistant too. His anger was way out of proportion to what had happened. People don't explode like that unless they're hiding something big. But this time I didn't cry. I didn't apologize. I didn't back down. I just looked at him calmly and said, "You're right. I'll handle the shopping myself." He looked surprised. He was used to me getting upset when he yelled. He was used to me trying to fix things and make peace. Good, he said, but he looked confused by my reaction. That night, while Henry was working late again, I called my old college roommate Jessica. She was a lawyer now, specializing in family law. "Jess, I need some advice," I said quietly, making sure Emma was asleep. "I think my husband is having an affair, and I need to know what my options are." "Oh honey," she said. "Tell me everything." So I did. The hotel charge, the mysterious texts, abandoning me at the hospital, the gaslighting, all of it. "This is bad," she said when I finished. "But you're smart to be gathering evidence. Can you meet me tomorrow?" I met Jessica at her law office the next day. I brought Emma with me in her car seat, and I brought my notebook full of documented incidents. Jessica looked through everything carefully. Her face got more serious with each page. "The hospital abandonment is really bad," she said. Judges don't like men who abandon their wives during childbirth. And this hotel charge on the same night. That's going to be very hard for him to explain. What should I do? I asked, bouncing Emma gently. Keep documenting everything. And I think we need to gather some witnesses. Did any of the hospital staff see what happened? The nurses were amazing. They saw everything. They saw me alone for hours. They saw how upset I was. Good. I want you to go back and get their names and contact information. Tell them you might need them to write statements about what they witnessed. Is that legal? Absolutely. They're witnesses to his abandonment and neglect. In custody cases, this kind of evidence is crucial. Jessica leaned forward. There's something else. Based on what you've told me, I think this is bigger than just an affair. I think he's been financially irresponsible too. The hotel charges, the unexplained expenses. We need to look deeper into your finances. What do you mean? I mean, he might be spending marital assets on his affair. That's called dissipation of assets, and judges really don't like it. My head was spinning. This was more complicated than I had thought. What's my next step? Go get those witness statements. And keep documenting everything. We're going to need it all. Over the next week, I went back to the hospital. I spoke with the nurses who had been there the night Emma was born. They all remembered me, and they remembered that I was alone. Oh honey, I felt so bad for you, said Nancy, the head nurse. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've never seen a husband just leave like that during labor. Would you be willing to write down what you remember? I asked. Of course. That man should be ashamed of himself. I got similar statements from 3 other nurses. They all confirmed that Henry had left me alone, that he hadn't returned, and that they had to comfort me through the birth of my child. I also reached out to some of our mutual friends. I didn't tell them about the affair suspicions, but I asked casual questions about Henry's behavior lately. He's been weird at poker nights, said Mark, one of his longtime friends. Always checking his phone, leaving early, and he mentioned working with some new woman at the office. Vanessa something. There was that name again. Vanessa. Another friend, Patricia, was more direct. Is everything okay with you two? Because Henry's been acting single lately. Last month at the bar, he was talking to women like he wasn't married. My heart sank, but I wasn't surprised. The evidence was piling up. That evening, Jessica called me. I did some digging, she said. This is bigger than we thought. I found more hotel charges, restaurant bills, even jewelry purchases. All on credit cards you're liable for. How much? I asked, afraid of the answer. Over $5,000 in the last 3 months. And that's just what I can see so far. I felt sick. $5,000 of our money spent on his affair while I was pregnant and then taking care of our newborn baby. Henry started posting pictures on social media. Photos of him holding Emma, captions about being the best daddy in the world and loving fatherhood. People were commenting about what a wonderful father he was. I stared at the screen, feeling bitter. The man who had abandoned me at the hospital was now playing the perfect dad online. He was getting praise and attention for doing the bare minimum while I was doing all the real work. But I didn't comment. I didn't correct the narrative. I just screenshot every post and added them to my evidence file. Jessica had told me that judges pay attention to social media, especially when it contradicts reality. Let him dig his own grave, she had said. The bigger the lie, the harder the fall. That night, Henry came home late again. It was almost midnight, and he claimed he had been working on a presentation. How was work? I asked casually. Busy. This new project is taking up all my time. The one with Vanessa? He froze. How do you know about Vanessa? You mentioned her before. You said she was a coworker. Right. Yeah. She's helping with the technical aspects. She must be very dedicated, working so late all the time. Henry looked uncomfortable. Yeah, she's very professional. I nodded and went back to feeding Emma. But I was thinking about those hotel charges, those restaurant bills, those jewelry purchases. Very professional indeed. Later that night, I heard Henry's phone buzz. He grabbed it quickly, but I caught a glimpse of the screen. Another message from Vanessa. I pretended to be asleep, but I watched him sneak out of the bedroom with his phone. I could hear him whispering in the hallway. The next week, I decided to follow him. I arranged for my mom to watch Emma, telling her I needed to run some errands. Instead, I drove to Henry's office and waited. At 5:30, Henry came out of the building. But he wasn't alone. He was with a tall blonde woman in a tight dress and expensive shoes. She was laughing at something he said, touching his arm, looking at him like he was the most interesting man in the world. This had to be Vanessa. They got into Henry's car together, and I followed at a distance. They drove to an upscale restaurant downtown, the same restaurant that had appeared on our credit card statements multiple times. I parked across the street and watched them through the window. They weren't sitting across from each other like business colleagues. They were sitting next to each other in a booth. Very close, very intimate. Henry's hand was on her leg under the table. My phone buzzed. A text from Henry, working late tonight. Don't wait up. I took a screenshot of the text, then took pictures of them at the restaurant. The evidence was overwhelming now. But as I watched them, something else became clear. Vanessa knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't some innocent woman who didn't know Henry was married. The way she acted, the way she looked at him, she knew. And she didn't care. When they left the restaurant, they didn't go back to the office. They drove to the same Marriott where Henry had spent the night I gave birth to Emma. I sat in my car and cried. Not because I was heartbroken, I had stopped loving Henry weeks ago, but because I was angry. Angry that they thought they could fool me. Angry that they were using my money for their affair. Angry that they were disrespecting my daughter. I called Jessica from the parking lot. I have everything we need, I told her. Photos, witnesses, financial records. When do we hit them? Soon, she said. Very soon. When I got home, Henry was already there. He claimed his meeting had ended early. He even brought me flowers. Probably guilt flowers after spending the evening with Vanessa. You're so sweet, I said, forcing a smile. What's the occasion? Do I need an occasion to bring flowers to my beautiful wife? It was an act. He was probably trying to ease his guilt, or maybe Vanessa had suggested he be nicer to me to avoid suspicion. Either way, I played along. You're right, I said, kissing his cheek. I'm sorry I've been so stressed lately. New baby and all. He looked relieved. I understand. I know this hasn't been easy for you. If only he knew how hard it was about to get for him. Over the next few days, I pretended everything was fine. I cooked his favorite meals, asked about his day, even suggested we plan a date night once I felt ready to leave Emma with my mom. Henry relaxed. He thought he had fooled me. He thought his lies were working. Meanwhile, Jessica was preparing our case. She had found even more evidence of financial infidelity, charges at jewelry stores, expensive lingerie shops, even a weekend getaway to a bed and breakfast 2 hours away. All paid for with our joint credit cards. He's not just having an affair, Jessica told me. He's been using marital assets to finance it. In some states, that's grounds for him to forfeit his claim to half the marital property. What about custody? With the hospital abandonment, the financial irresponsibility, and the affair, I think we can get you primary custody. He'll get visitation, but supervised at first. Supervised. A man who abandons his wife in labor shows poor judgment about priorities. The court will want to make sure he can prioritize Emma's needs over his own desires. I felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. 2 weeks later, Henry and I got into another fight. This time it was about me asking him to watch Emma for 2 hours while I went to the grocery store. I work all week, he complained. Can't I just relax on the weekend? I work all week too, Henry. Taking care of our baby is a full-time job. I just need 2 hours. It's different. Your job is here at home. Mine is stressful. I deal with deadlines and difficult people all day. And I deal with a crying baby, dirty diapers, and no sleep. But apparently, that doesn't count as real work. He rolled his eyes. Here we go again. Everything's a competition with you. Everything's about how hard your life is. My life. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Henry, you've changed exactly 3 diapers since Emma was born. You've gotten up for midnight feedings exactly 0 times. You left me alone during labor and missed the birth of your daughter. But somehow I'm the problem. His face turned red. You know what? Maybe if you appreciated what I do for this family instead of constantly complaining, I want to spend more time here. And maybe if you acted like you actually wanted a family instead of treating us like an inconvenience, I'd have more to appreciate. For the first time, I saw a real anger flash in his eyes. Not just annoyance or frustration, but anger. "You're lucky I'm still here," he said coldly. Most men would have left by now. I stared at him for a long moment. Then I smiled. Not a happy smile, but something darker. "You won't be for long," I whispered. He looked confused, like he hadn't heard me correctly. But he had. And deep down, I think he knew exactly what I meant. The next morning, while Henry was at work, I started executing my escape plan. I had been preparing for weeks, and now it was time to act. I had already found a small apartment across town. It was modest but clean, and it was in my name only. I had paid the deposit and first month's rent with money from my secret bank account. I started moving things gradually. First, Emma's essentials, her clothes, toys, crib, and changing supplies. Then my important documents: birth certificate, passport, social security card, Emma's birth certificate. I stored everything at the new apartment. Jessica had advised me to be careful about this part. "Don't take anything that's clearly his," she had said. "But your personal belongings, the baby's things, and items you brought into the marriage are fair game." I also made copies of all our financial records, tax returns, and bank statements. Jessica needed these for the divorce proceedings. The hardest part was hiding my tracks. I couldn't let Henry know what I was planning until I was ready to disappear completely. That afternoon, while going through our joint bank statements one more time, I found something new. A charge I hadn't seen before. $500 at Cartier jewelry store, dated just 3 days ago. My hands shook as I called the store. "I'm calling to verify a purchase," I said. "A $500 item bought with a credit card ending in 4782. "Yes, I remember that purchase," the sales associate said. "A beautiful gold bracelet with diamond accents. The gentleman said it was for someone very special." Someone very special. While I was home taking care of his daughter, Henry was buying expensive jewelry for his mistress. I hung up the phone and immediately called Jessica. "We're done waiting," I told her. "I want him served with papers tomorrow. Are you sure you're ready?" I looked around the house where I had tried so hard to build a happy family, where I had prepared for Emma's arrival with so much love and excitement, where Henry had betrayed us both over and over again. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. That evening, I made Henry's favorite dinner: steak, mashed potatoes, and green beans. I even opened a bottle of wine. He came home in a good mood, probably because he thought I had accepted his lies and stopped questioning him. "This is nice," he said, cutting into his steak. "We should do this more often." "Definitely," I agreed, refilling his wine glass. "I've been thinking about what you said, about appreciating what you do for us." He looked pleased. "I'm glad you understand. I know I work a lot, but it's all for you and Emma." I nodded sympathetically. "I know. And I'm sorry I've been so demanding lately." After dinner, I excused myself to give Emma a bath. While the water was running, I opened my laptop and logged into our joint credit card account one more time. I printed out every statement from the last 6 months, highlighting all the charges related to his affair. The evidence was overwhelming. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry, lingerie, weekend trips. Over $8,000 spent on Vanessa while I was pregnant and caring for our newborn baby. I put all the papers in a folder and hid it in the diaper bag. Tomorrow, Henry would finally face the consequences of his choices. I gave Emma her bath, singing softly to her while she splashed in the warm water. She was so innocent, so perfect. She deserved better than this mess her father had created. "Don't worry, baby girl," I whispered. "Mommy's going to take care of everything." That night, Henry was more affectionate than he had been in weeks. He probably thought his charm offensive was working. He had no idea that I had already checked out of our marriage completely. I lay in bed next to him, listening to him breathe, knowing it would be the last night we would ever spend under the same roof. I woke up early and fed Emma one last time in our old house. Then I packed the rest of our things while Henry was still sleeping. By 7 a.m., we were gone. I left a simple note on the kitchen counter: "Emma and I are safe. Contact my lawyer. All future communication should go through her." I included Jessica's business card. Then I drove to our new apartment and waited. At 10:30, my phone started buzzing. Henry had found the note. The calls came one after another, but I didn't answer. Then the text started. Where are you? What's going on? This is insane. Come home right now. You can't just take my daughter away from me. If you don't bring Emma back, I'm calling the police. I screenshot every message and sent them to Jessica. His anger and panic were exactly what we had expected. At noon, Jessica called. The papers have been served, she said. Henry's been officially notified of the divorce and custody proceedings. How's he taking it? About as well as you'd expect, I said, showing her the angry messages. Good. Let him be angry. Angry people make mistakes, and we can use every mistake he makes against him in court. An hour later, Henry showed up at my mom's house, thinking that's where I was staying. When my mom told him she didn't know where I was, he accused her of lying. He made such a scene that the neighbors called the police. My mom called me shaken. He was out of control, she said. I've never seen him like that. Neither had I. But it didn't surprise me. Men like Henry don't handle losing control very well. By evening, Henry had figured out where I was living. He showed up at my apartment building, pounding on the door and demanding to see Emma. Open this door right now, he shouted. I have rights. She's my daughter too. I called the police immediately. My estranged husband is at my door making threats, I told the dispatcher. I have a newborn baby, and I'm scared. The police arrived within minutes. Through the peephole, I watched them talk to Henry in the hallway. He was gesturing wildly, clearly agitated. One of the officers was taking notes. After a few minutes, they knocked on my door. Ma'am, we need to speak with you, one officer said. I opened the door, holding Emma protectively. Your husband says you kidnapped his child, the officer said. But you're not under arrest. Can you explain the situation? I handed him copies of the divorce papers Jessica had prepared. I filed for divorce and custody today, I said calmly. My lawyer can confirm that I have every legal right to be here with my daughter. The officer looked over the documents. These look legitimate. Sir, he called to Henry, you need to contact your wife's attorney if you want to see your child. You can't show up at her home making demands. Henry's face was red with rage. This is ridiculous. She's my wife. That's my baby. Sir, you need to calm down. If you continue to harass your wife, we'll have to arrest you for disturbing the peace. Henry looked like he wanted to argue more, but even he could see that the police weren't on his side. He stormed off, but not before giving me a look full of hatred. I thanked the officers and closed the door, my heart pounding. Emma had slept through the whole thing. The next morning, Jessica called with an update. I filed for a temporary restraining order, she said. After the incident last night and his behavior at your mother's house, I think we can get it approved. How long will that take? The hearing is this afternoon. I'll need you there to testify about his abandonment at the hospital and his aggressive behavior. That afternoon, I sat in a courtroom with Emma in my arms, telling a judge about the night my daughter was born, about how Henry had left me alone during labor, about how he had spent that night at a hotel with another woman, about how he had been using our money to finance his affair. Henry sat across the room with a lawyer he had hired that morning. He looked angry and defeated. The judge listened to everything, including the police reports from Henry's incidents at my mom's house and my apartment. Mr. Walsh, the judge said, abandoning your wife during childbirth shows an extreme lack of judgment and compassion. Combined with your recent aggressive behavior, I'm granting Mrs. Walsh's request for a protective order. Henry started to object, but his lawyer stopped him. Furthermore, the judge continued, until we can have a full custody hearing, visits with the child will be supervised only. Mrs. Walsh will have primary custody. Henry's face went white. Your Honor, that's my daughter. I've never hurt her. Sir, a man who abandons his wife in labor raises serious questions about his ability to prioritize a child's needs over his own desires. These supervised visits are for the child's protection. As we left the courthouse, Henry tried to approach me in the parking lot. But with the restraining order in place, he had to keep his distance. This isn't over, he called out. I'll fight this. Good luck, I replied, buckling Emma into her car seat. You're going to need it. Over the next few weeks, Henry's life began to unravel completely. Jessica had been right, angry people make mistakes, and Henry made several big ones. First, his affair with Vanessa came to light at his office. Someone had seen them together and reported it to Human Resources. Having an affair with a subordinate violated company policy, and Henry was facing disciplinary action. But it got worse. When the company investigated, they discovered that Henry had been using his corporate credit card for some of their dates. That was considered theft, and Henry was fired immediately. Vanessa was fired too, for participating in the misuse of company funds. Suddenly, their romantic affair became a criminal matter. His boss called me yesterday, Jessica reported. They're considering pressing charges for embezzlement. Henry used almost $2,000 in company money for personal expenses. I wasn't surprised. A man who would steal from his own family would certainly steal from his employer. The job loss hit Henry hard financially. He couldn't afford his expensive lawyer anymore and had to switch to a public defender. He also couldn't keep up with his share of our mortgage and credit card payments. Meanwhile, Vanessa was facing her own problems. She couldn't find another job because word had spread about the affair and the embezzlement. Her reputation in the industry was ruined. Best of all, they turned on each other. Jessica heard through her contacts that Henry was claiming Vanessa had seduced him and convinced him to use company funds. Vanessa was saying Henry had lied about being separated from his wife and had manipulated her into the affair. They were destroying each other, and I didn't have to lift a finger. The final custody hearing took place 6 weeks later. Jessica had prepared meticulously, and our case was strong. We presented evidence of Henry's abandonment during Emma's birth, including written statements from 4 hospital nurses. We showed the financial records proving he had spent over $10,000 of marital money on his affair. We presented the police reports from his aggressive incidents. Henry's public defender tried to argue that he was a good father who had made some mistakes, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge was particularly harsh about the hospital abandonment. "Mr. Walsh," she said, "I have been presiding over family court for 15 years, and I have never seen such a clear case of a father prioritizing his own desires over his family's needs. You left your wife alone during one of the most vulnerable moments of her life to spend the night with your mistress. That shows a fundamental lack of character and judgment." Henry tried to speak, but the judge held up her hand. "Furthermore, your theft of marital assets to finance this affair, followed by your harassment of your wife when she left, demonstrates that you cannot be trusted to put your daughter's interests first." The final ruling was better than I had hoped. I was granted primary custody of Emma, with Henry allowed only supervised visits every other weekend. He was ordered to pay child support based on his previous income, even though he was currently unemployed. He was also responsible for half of Emma's medical expenses and daycare costs. Most importantly, he was ordered to pay my legal fees, over $8,000. As we left the courthouse, Henry looked broken. His lawyer patted him on the shoulder and left him sitting alone on a bench outside. I didn't feel sorry for him. Not after everything he had put us through. 6 months later, I was thriving. Emma was healthy and happy, growing bigger and more beautiful every day. I had returned to work part-time, doing freelance marketing from home. My new apartment had become a real home, warm, peaceful, and full of love. Henry, on the other hand, was struggling. He had found a new job, but it paid much less than his previous position. Between child support, legal fees, and his own living expenses, he was barely getting by. He had moved in with a roommate in a cheap apartment across town. The supervised visits with Emma were awkward and uncomfortable. He clearly didn't know how to take care of a baby, and Emma would cry when he held her. Vanessa had moved back to her hometown in another state. According to mutual friends, she was bitter about the whole experience and blamed Henry for ruining her career and reputation. Their great love affair had lasted exactly 3 months before collapsing under the weight of reality. One day, I was walking through downtown with Emma in her stroller when I saw them. Henry and Vanessa, arguing outside a coffee shop. She had apparently come back to town to deal with some legal issues related to the embezzlement charges. They looked terrible. Henry was thinner, stressed, wearing clothes that needed washing. Vanessa looked older, harder, like the past few months had aged her years. I could hear them arguing as I walked past. "This is all your fault," she was saying. "You told me you were getting divorced." "I was planning to," Henry replied. "But you pushed too hard, too fast. If you had been more patient." "Patient? I lost my job because of you. I can't even get references because everyone knows about our affair." They were blaming each other for the consequences of their own choices. It would have been pathetic if it wasn't so satisfying. I walked past them without stopping, pushing Emma's stroller toward the park. They didn't even notice me. A year later, Emma took her first steps. She toddled across our living room into my arms, laughing with pure joy. It was a perfect moment. Just the two of us in our cozy home, celebrating this milestone together. Henry missed it, of course. He was working a double shift at his new job, trying to keep up with his financial obligations. The supervised visits had been reduced to once a month because he kept canceling or showing up late. I took a video of Emma's first steps and sent it to my family and friends. Everyone was so excited and proud, but I didn't send it to Henry. He had missed too many important moments already. That evening, I sat on our couch with Emma sleeping in my arms, thinking about how far we had come. A year ago, I was heartbroken, betrayed, and scared. I thought my life was falling apart. But sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. Henry's betrayal had forced me to find my own strength. It had made me realize that I didn't need him. I was better without him. Emma stirred in her arms and smiled in her sleep. She was growing up confident and loved, surrounded by people who put her needs first. She would never remember the drama of her first few months. All she would know was that her mother had fought for her and won. I looked out the window at the city lights twinkling in the distance. Somewhere out there, Henry was probably lying awake worrying about money or arguing with Vanessa or regretting his choices. But that wasn't my problem anymore. The day he left me at the hospital was the day I started walking out of his life. It took me a while to make it all the way out, but I had finally made it. And I was never looking back.